Hi, my name's Mark, one of the pastors at Trillium. Paul says to the Colossians this. He says, since you are God's chosen people, holy and beloved, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. It's that opening phrase, since you're God's chosen people, that sometimes trips me up. And what does it mean to say you're chosen by God? It sounds arrogant, presumptuous, pretentious, for sure. In the Old Testament, Israel claimed to be God's chosen people. That's probably the main theme of the whole Old Testament, being God's chosen people. There are many times where it's noted that God has chosen Israel. Israel has chosen God's chosen people. That choosing occurs in the desert between Israel's journey from Egypt to the Promised Land. At Mount Sinai, God chooses Israel. That's what it says in Exodus 19:5. This is God speaking to Moses. Now therefore, if you, and he's speaking through Moses to Israel, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, my promise, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples. Notice that this is a conditional sentence. It has an if-then construction to it. If you clean up your room, then I'll take you to the mall. The if and then are related to each other. Israel tended to focus on the back half of the sentence, the then part, being God's special nation, God's special people, God's chosen ones. They tended to forget about exactly what God had put in the if part. If you obey my voice and keep the promise between us, the covenant. And that caused Israel to get a skewed understanding of what it meant to be special, to be God's chosen ones. They lost track of what the purpose was that they'd been assigned in life. You have to go to 19:6 in Exodus to get the full picture. It says this, indeed, the whole earth is mine, but you shall be for me a priestly kingdom and a holy nation. And there it is, the assignment. God has called Israel to become a priestly kingdom and a holy nation of the world, which means that they are to be God's holy ambassadors, emissaries of light and love to the world. They are called to bring the Gentile nations into a full relationship with the Creator. That's the assignment they've been given. One of my profs used to say, we're always saved for a reason. We're never just saved. That's why when evangelicals would ask people, are you saved? It sort of misses the point. It's not a simple yes or no answer. The question is, what have you been saved for? Do you know what you've been saved for? Do you know what assignment you've been given? So they say Israel has been given an assignment to go to the nations of the world to bring the revelation of God to the peoples of the earth. And I think in being chosen, it applies the same way as being saved. We're always chosen for a reason. We're chosen for a purpose. It makes the whole question of being chosen a little different than often the world sees it. When the Colossians are called chosen people of God, it means that there's a holy assignment given to them. And the question is, what assignment has been given to them? And I think it's not very different from Israel. They've been given the assignment of being the ambassadors now of Jesus Christ to the world, the ambassadors of God's holy way of love and life to the world. And that means that they've embraced that downward mobile life that Jesus calls his disciples to. It means, unlike the world where we're to put specialness on a pedestal, we're in the world of the kingdom of God. To be special is to become a servant, to become an ambassador, to become essentially aligned with God's interests in life, and to put our own self-interests as of second priority, to identify with God's interests in the world and to put our own aside. And that means there's a sort of emptying of self, what the New Testament calls a kenosis, an emptying of the self so that there's space for God's Spirit and God's way to enter into us. There's a wonderful story in the Gospel of Mark. James and John come to Jesus. They say, look, Lord, when you come into your glory, we want to be your special ones. We want to stand on either side of you. We want to be in that most privileged relationship. We want to be your special disciples. And of course, when the other disciples hear this, they get really upset, and there's an argument goes amongst them. And finally, Jesus calls them all together, and he says to them, in the Gentile world, in that world out there, when people are special, they get placed on the pedestal, but not with you. If you want to be special, then you must become the servant of others. In fact, if you want to be the top disciple, if you want to be the most important, special disciple in the kingdom of God, then you must become the servant of all, the slave, literally, of all people. He says, the Son of Man, the truly special one, came not to be served, but to serve, and to offer his life up as a ransom for many. To offer his life as a poured out libation of a gift of life to the world. And that's what Jesus calls us to. It's what we've been chosen for. To be that life-giving presence to the world around us. To put God's priorities first and foremost in our interactions with other people. To focus on God's interests in people, not our own. And to allow the kingdom of love to flow through us to the world. That's what Paul is talking about when he speaks to the Colossians and calls them God's chosen people. It's what is meant in the church today, if we're authentic to the teachings and ministry of Jesus, what it means to be God's chosen people in the world. We're to become broken bread and poured out wine for the sustenance and life of the world.